This video is sponsored by Inspiration Station. Spice up any room in your home or office with these creative and unique digital prints for you and your loved ones. Choose from a variety of different designs with new additions being added frequently. Each piece of art has its own unique style and purpose, including motivational quotes, paintings, and more. These prices are insanely low, too. Click the link in the description to check out the store and share it with your friends and family too, as there is something for everyone. Now, let's get to the video. In 1989, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was put out, and after that, the series was kind of put on ice. There were some books and there was a TV show about young Indy that came out, but George Lucas had decided not to write any more Indy stories and instead focus on the prequel trilogy, which would be his work going into the 90s and the early 2000s. But once he was able to wrap up Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, which at that time was supposed to be the last Star Wars movie, he was able to come back to Indiana Jones in 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, once again directed by Steven Spielberg. This movie takes place 19 years after Last Crusade. I mean, I thought Last Crusade would be the last one, not just because it was called The Last Crusade, because that's obviously like, a double meaning there, but I thought there was going to be a trilogy, and that was it. But no, the story does continue. This movie came out in 2008, and I've only seen the movie twice. I saw it on DVD maybe like 12, 13 years ago. I don't exactly remember when. And I didn't hate it. I know that the movie got a lot of hate when it came out. This was not a well liked film at all, and we're going to go into why in the video. But after that, I didn't really go back to watch it. I feel like the reason as to why is because point blank, like, this movie's not as good as the first three. I'm going to get that out of the way right now. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is anywhere near being as good as the original three films. However, after watching it again for this rewatch going into Dial of Destiny, I have to say that even though I've only seen it twice, this movie is not a bad movie at all. Yes, there's some stupid things in the movie. I will agree with that. The infamous, Indy surviving a nuclear explosion in a fridge, that was dumb. That's pretty stupid. The UFO plotline, not my favorite, but also not the dumbest thing. I understand people that wanted the Indy series to stick to more religious artifacts and things like that. Having a science fiction, I mean, the movie's a tribute to science fiction theater of like the 40s and 50s, but having a science fiction artifact here, to me, it doesn't seem as far fetched as people believe. It doesn't seem like it's that different from something religious. So that didn't really bug me either. And there's actually a lot of things this movie did that I thought it did really well. So the main problem I had with this movie, besides, the overabundance of CGI, which had become a thing by the time it came out, is that the middle part is slow. The second act of this movie drags on for a long time, and I found myself kind of zoning out of it because nothing was really happening. But I think the first and third act are really good. The opening sequence here, where Indiana Jones meets Irina Spalko, played by Cate Blanchett, who is a great actress and did a great job in many movies, including this one. Her Russian accent was on point here. Soviet, whatever. I like that sequence a lot. I really did like that sequence. It felt like classic Indy. It was the swashbuckling adventure Indy that we all come to. Yes, Harrison Ford was obviously a lot older than he was during the original trilogy, but I love that whole sequence. It was great. Then, of course, we have the introduction of Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Williams. Shia LaBeouf in 2008 was everywhere. The dude was hot off of, the Transformers movie, which came out about a year before this one. So the dude was probably at the peak of his career. And then, of course, the big twist later on is that he is, of course, Indiana Jones's son. That he and Marion Ravenwood reprised once again by Karen Allen, which I was very happy to see because Karen Allen is a great actress, and I love the character of Marion Ravenwood. Watch my review for Raiders of the Lost Ark. I put her over big time. Not only was she incredibly pretty and had one of the best smiles of the 80s, she hasn't even aged that much, man. Like, she does not look bad considering how many years have passed since Raiders. You understand what I'm saying? But she's back here as Indy's ex-wife or ex-lover, and of course, the mother of Mutt Williams. Now, Shia LaBeouf, I can understand people having a problem with him. I get it. I get it. I don't think he was that bad here. I really don't think he was that bad. So besides that, John Hurt is in this film playing Harold Ox Oxley, who is another old friend of Indiana Jones, a character that is new but feels familiar in a weird way. He's kind of replacing, Indy's old buddy from the first film, the first couple films actually, well, the first one and the third one. But I wanted to talk real quick about some of the behind the scenes stuff. Frank Darabont, the same guy who wrote the script for Shawshank Redemption and directed it, and was also the showrunner and director for Walking Dead Season 1. I love Frank Darabont, bro. The Mist, The Green Mile, the dude has an amazing catalog of films. He wrote one of the earliest screenplays for this movie. This movie had multiple different people involved in the writing. Lucas obviously had the main story. Ultimately, Jeff Nathanson wound up being the writer, but there were early scripts that he had worked on, Frank Darabont worked on, that were reworked for the movie. But there were ideas. I mean, the idea of Indy even having a kid, an offspring, that idea was not anything new. They were going to talk about that in Indiana Jones, in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And they talk about how he had a daughter. Now, there's a lot of debate among Indy fans about whether or not that show is even canon to these movies, because that show would kind of make sense when it comes to the original trilogy, but this movie changes things. Either way, it does feel a bit disjointed, because Frank Darabont did have it be a daughter in the original story, and later on it was obviously changed because Jeff Nathanson was the guy who went in there and George Lucas and made changes to the script, and because of that it became Shia LaBeouf. Now, I'm not sure if it was because Shia LaBeouf was chosen by Lucasfilm because he was so hot at the time, or because they just wanted to have him have a son. Difficult to say on that one, but there you go. So yeah, the middle act to me is, I don't know, wasn't a huge fan of that. Like I said, it goes very slow. Cate Blanchett does her best to play a great villain. I mean, this is nowhere near how good she was in Thor Ragnarok. She was hot in that movie, yo. Let me tell you, she was super attractive in that movie. But here in this film, she's fine. But she's definitely one of the weaker villains in Indiana Jones. And again, going back to like this nonsense about, oh well, UFOs, that's not realistic. Somebody actually said that. And it's like, well, first of all, even if you're a Christian, or even if you're a Jew, or whatever your faith is, a lot of the stuff that was in the Indiana Jones movies is played up for fiction versus being biblically accurate. Not to mention that in Temple of Doom, we have hearts being ripped out of people's chests. That's not exactly real. You get what I'm saying? Indiana Jones movies have always been on the border. They are realistic, more so than Star Wars, I would say. At least, they're more grounded, but by no means are these supposed to be like even James Bond has silly stuff in it. Like, by no means are these movies supposed to be, like period pieces. You understand what I'm saying? I guess you could call them somewhat that, because, obviously World War II was referenced before, and now we have the Cold War with the Soviets. It's a thing that the franchise does, but it's always that sort of alternate reality world. You understand what I'm saying? That isn't really real. And so it's silly. I think it's dumb to criticize the movie for that aspect. I don't think this is even a bad movie. There's some genuinely funny stuff in this movie. A couple of parts of the film, I won't lie, Indy kind of acts like a clown. But the movie, the actors are all really, they have chemistry. They work well together. I can't say this is even a bad movie. Again, it's not one that I rush to see. It's not the comfort movie of the franchise. Raiders to me is probably the easiest one to watch start to finish because it's just a very chill movie and it's paced really well. This one has some pacing issues despite it only being about 2 hours. You know, Spielberg did fine, but man, I just think back to how much shit this movie got and it was not that bad. In fact, it was kind of good. But if I'm being honest with you, it is not one that I go back to revisit often enough for fun. It really isn't. I mean, it's just a movie that's there on my shelf. It's part of my 4K collection of the Indiana Jones films. So I really can't sit there and say it's a bad movie, but if I'm gonna go back and watch the trilogy, obviously this is the one where I'm gonna be a bit like, damn, you know, maybe they could have improved upon this, and the movie definitely has room for improvement. But saying it's bad, I don't think it is. I really don't. I do not think it's a bad movie at all. I also want to say that Indy marrying Raven at the end of the movie was a really satisfying ending. Probably the most satisfying ending of any of the movies because it ties back into Raiders. And I feel like not only was that a great moment for the character, to me that should have been the end. And I know they have Dial of Destiny is the new final movie, even though they might make more. I mean, who knows? Even though Harrison's getting up there in age, still, the great finale of having Indy finally marry her, I like that. That is a good thing to close off the character. And to be honest, part of me wishes they would have just stopped there. Just stop with this one. But Lucasfilm loves your money, so there's Dial of Destiny and whatever else comes after. This is a thumbs up movie, but again, it's not one that I like to go back and watch that much. It has fun aspects. It maybe was getting long in the tooth at times, but being bad, I don't think so. With that being said, I'll see you guys for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.